Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's discussion of 25 years of Hong Kong action scenes. I'm Tom Vick, curator of film here at the Freer and Sackler Galleries, the National Museum of Asian Art. This event is part of our 25th annual Made in Hong Kong Film Festival, which is co-sponsored, as it is every year, by the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office. Before we get started and introduce our guest tonight, I wanted to let you know about some upcoming events. The final two events in this year's festival are coming up next week and the week after. On August 20th, Shaolin Jazz, which is a local DJ group, will be doing one of their Can I Kick It events. DJ Two Tone Jones will be doing live DJing along with Killzone 2, which is going to be really great. They've done some live events for us, and having them online will be equally great, I'm sure. And then on the 28th at 9:15, 36 Cinema will be presenting My Lucky Stars with live commentary by stuntman Scott Atkins, who we may talk a bit about tonight. This event is normally a monthly paid event, but they're making a limited number of tickets available to our audience, which you can sign up for on our website. So after we have our discussion tonight, please go by there and sign up. And as a reminder, please keep your microphones muted unless we call on you, but feel free to put your questions in the chat function and make sure they're sent to everyone. And before we get started, I'm interested to know if any of you are here from somewhere outside of the DC metro area. And if you are, just feel free to pop that in the chat so we can see what kind of a wide-ranging audience we're getting here tonight. Oh, Toronto, Maine, this is great. Wow, California, New Mexico, this is fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. So our guest tonight is R. Emmet Sweeney. He is the Associate Director of Media Production and Operations at Kino Lorber Incorporated. He is also a regular contributor to TCM.com and Film Comment. You can find him on Twitter at R_Emmet, that's EMMET. So the reason he is here with us tonight is a while ago he wrote a sort of decade sum-up article for Film Comment that summed up the best action scenes of the last decade, and I was very impressed with the sort of global scope of his selections. And so I thought I would challenge him to come up with 25 great Hong Kong action scenes from the past 25 years to celebrate, obviously, the 25th anniversary of the festival. And he didn't disappoint. I put them in a blog post, which you can read. He's also brought several of them tonight that we can look at. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome R. Emmet Sweeney.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming. And thank you to Tom for inviting me. It was a very welcome distraction during these pandemic days.
Yes, for all of us, yeah. So in watching the scenes that you selected, I was really kind of, it sort of really drove home the sheer variety of action scenes. There are your straight ahead kind of fight scenes, there are your car chases, and then there are the sort of varieties of humor from Jackie Chan to Stephen Chow, and then the sort of slow tension building kind of Johnny Doe style gunfights. So what went into your kind of criteria for selecting this variety of scenes?
Yeah, well, the aim was to get a broad cross section of Hong Kong fight, of Hong Kong styles of fights. And as you said, you can start with Fox Hunter from 1995, which is more of kind of a gunfighting kind of film instead of a martial arts. And Stephen Tung, the director, and also known as Wei Tung, and action choreographer, I think has been highly influential and kind of underrepresented in lists of this type. As you'll see in the clip, which when we'll play it, it's kind of a gun fu, kind of a predecessor of John Wick, where the gun itself becomes part of the fight scene, part of the rhythm of the scene. Instead of just firing, it becomes a weapon, like a physical object, and not just something that makes noise. And then, yeah, as you said, there's kind of the one that takes in the Hollywood influence, like High Risk, or also known as Meltdown, which is a hilarious takeoff on Die Hard by Wong Jing, who's a filmmaker who takes in things from everywhere in kind of a nonsense parodic style. That movie has an incredible parody of Jackie Chan, who's depicted as this kind of self-absorbed has-been. They had a falling out after this movie called City Hunter, which Jackie didn't like too much. And then, of course, there's Choi Hark, who has these impressionistic kind of fights, which are kind of chopped up very into like kind of a dreamlike fashion. And Jackie Chan, there's the Chinese opera background with tumbling and acrobatics and his Buster Keaton influence. So it's amazing how Hong Kong can pull from cultures, pull from its own culture, kind of tie it up all together and present it in these different original packages. And so that's kind of why I was trying to do, and coming up with the list is getting little bits of every kind of style that I could, and I hope I succeeded there.
Well, you definitely did. But since you brought up Fox Hunter, maybe we should just start with showing that clip. So, Andy, can you cue up the clip from Fox Hunter? So what is it about that scene that really impressed you, Robert?
Yeah, Fox Hunter hasn't had a recent 4K restoration or anything, so yet that we know of. But I think you can draw a direct line from Fox Hunter to something like John Wick. Chad Stahelski and David Leitch are big Hong Kong movie fans. They started as stuntmen, and they worked under Yuan Wu-ping on The Matrix. And the way in which the gun is incorporated into the fight itself, I think, is a very unique way to approach the gunfight, and kind of specifically where the part where she takes it, she stops the hammer from hitting the gun to go out and taking out the clip. I think that just was a very unique way to approach the gunfight that I don't know if I'd seen in that specific way before that point.
So for you in general, what sort of makes for a great action scene? Is it kind of like these are really original touches, or are there other factors that sort of really make an action scene stand out for you?
It's tough to say just one thing, but if it succeeds at what it's aiming for, whether it's silly nonsense like perhaps a Stephen Chow and Shaolin Soccer, or sheer pyrotechnic, ability like Jackie Chan, or the intensity of a Donnie Yen fight, or something like Dragon in here, which is included more for. It's a very emotional scene because this film hasn't had a fight scene for about an hour, and it builds up that Donnie Yen has this backstory as a former member of this kind of gang death squad, that he's been reformed, and you wait this whole time until it's finally revealed and finally all comes out that he is this martial arts master. And it's a beautiful scene, but it's also one of the more emotionally moving scenes in the sequence. So, everyone is doing a different thing. And then, of course, Johnny To, it's the choreography, the camera movement, the whole mise en scène, which you don't necessarily bring up with some of these other ones when it's more about the physicality. So it's a film by film basis, but they all surprise me in different ways. I guess being surprised is one of the main things I value in these movies.
Should we go ahead and do a clip from Dragon then, since you brought it up?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's Donnie Yen versus Kara Hui, and it's directed by Peter Hosen Chan.
Okay, so Andy, my colleague Andy, will cue that one up. Go ahead and roll Dragon when you are ready. I like that what seemed to be a reference to the Buster Keaton house falling down bit there in the middle, when the wall of the house comes down and misses Donnie Yen and hits the guy in the head, right?
I guess you could interpret it that way.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Very different context. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to talk about Donnie Yen a little bit, who's become such a pivotal figure. He's one of the many people that Yuan Wu-ping discovered and kind of made into a star, like Jackie Chan and Jet Li. And he's not as charismatic as Jackie Chan, but he's become so important. As you can see in this one, he's got this kind of quiet reserve, and he's very good at being kind of the soft-spoken, iron-willed warrior type. And it works very well in this film because he's repressing the guy is repressing his past. And even though this one has a lot of wire work, which is usually not my preference, it's done very elegantly, I think, in this one. And there's a lot of other Donnie Yen films in here where he shows off more of his fighting skills, and like SPL and Flashpoint, which is incredible. Flashpoint's very important because that fight scene really introduces mixed martial arts. And that was a scene between him and Colin Chu that really brought mixed martial arts more into the forefront of fight sequences, with the help of John Salviti, who has helped with fight choreography on that one.
I see. We have a couple of questions in the chat. One is it common in Hong Kong action movies to have women fighting? So maybe you could talk about that, and maybe a little bit about Kara Wai too, because she's such an icon of Hong Kong action movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's from the beginning of the martial arts. When they started making them, like Angela Mao was a big figure in the early martial arts films, and um, that's another thing that is very invaluable. Is that you do, like in Jade Liang in Fox Hunter, she goes toe to toe with that dude and kicks him in the groin, which is also a common feature that I appreciate in the Hong Kong action film. But yeah, I don't have like a lot of more to say about Karahui outside of that scene. I mean, you could probably tell me more about her.
Well, she actually was a guest at our festival back when we used to do it in an actual theater a few years ago. She
There you
was
go.
wonderful, yeah, and yeah, I mean, she grew up very poor, and she sort of got into doing, I think, Peking opera kind of acrobatics, and eventually worked her way into the film industry, and was a big star, I think, in the '70s and '80s, and then kind of took some time off, and only recently kind of went back to making films, and she's still making these crazy action movies and doing these amazing fight scenes. So yeah,
Yeah.
she's quite impressive. So why do you think that, unlike other kind of action movie traditions, women have such a major role to play? Is it just sort of coming out of this performing tradition that was more equal, or do you have a theory about why that was?
Um, I wish I could give you like a real answer, but yeah, I think it probably comes out of that that tradition of the Chinese opera, of the acrobatic tradition, where they threw everybody on stage. But now I'm far beyond my my expertise right now, so I don't want to say any further before I say anything too stupid.
No, that's fine. Well, since you brought up Flashpoint and someone said Flashpoint is awesome, and you mentioned this mixed martial arts, maybe for people who aren't familiar exactly what mixed martial arts is or what it looks like, maybe you could kind of set up Flashpoint is the one that does include this, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the
So
point.
maybe we
And
could set that up and talk a little bit about how that's different from sort of more traditional kind of martial arts fighting and kung fu movies.
yeah, you'll see it's more about takedowns and the ground and pound and all these different submission maneuvers. You'll see it's more about grappling and taking them down and then putting them out, instead of more kind of showy, spin kicks and other stuff of that nature. So it's more like get the guy on the ground and like choke him out or break his arm and that kind of thing. It's trying to be more of a realistic mode of choreography, which has become more prominent, maybe more in like the direct-to-video stuff that Scott Adkins does now, who's coming in to talk about My Lucky Stars, which would be incredible. But yeah, it is a very, very influential sequence that kind of foreshadows what's going to happen later on in movies um, uh, from that point forward. So yeah, very
Great.
good.
Okay. So Andy, let's get Flashpoint up there. There's some great information in the chat. We have some very well-informed people in the audience tonight who've answered some of the questions that we had about, for instance, female performers and things like that. So thank you to everyone who's contributing. Someone also asked if more clips would be in Mandarin. As I mentioned earlier, these clips were all kind of uploaded to YouTube from various sources.
Yeah.
So it's not we don't. Some of them are in Mandarin, some Cantonese. One of them obviously had subtitles from Bahasa Indonesia. So it's a mixed bag. But the point is the action, right? Yeah.
Yes, these are not. Yeah, these are often not the original soundtracks and not the original, the best masters. So, but we're doing the best we can with what we got.
Yeah. Well, maybe, the one thing we haven't touched on yet is comedy. So do you want to maybe talk about this kind of tradition of comedic action movies in Hong Kong and pick a clip from your list there that you really would like to show us?
Man, yeah. I mean, I guess we got to go right to Stephen Chow then. He started with Wong Jing doing these nonsense comedies, which were very verbal based, kind of just coining silly words and then doing the most amazing kind of toilet humor. But then with the transition to more movies trended toward mainland China, he started making these CGI spectaculars and adapted way better than anybody could have anticipated after watching like $60 Million Man, which is hilarious. But something like Kung Fu Hustle, which is enormous, spectacular martial arts, mixture of like martial arts and Looney Tunes. Um, uh, but taking the martial arts aspect of it very seriously at the same time. It's an incredible accomplishment. And I don't know if you want to care between that and Shaolin Soccer, which kind of pairs the inspirational sports drama with Looney Tunes. And but I think Kung Fu also might be better as a one-off clip. So we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that. So Andy, it's Kung Fu Hustle is the next one.
Which one is that?
Oh, it's called Kung Fu Hustle?
It's not on the list. Thunderbolt?
No?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we should do Shaolin Soccer then?
I guess. Maybe a short clip from Shaolin Soccer. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
Okay.
But we
yeah,
can.
So maybe, yeah, let us know when we should cut it off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which one is
Shaolin
that?
Soccer is 2001.
Yeah, it's called Shaolin Soccer, Andy.
Is that also not on the list? Well, we can
always do Jackie Chan.
That is the natural transition. I know we have Thunderbolt because that started playing. So Jackie Chan, obviously everybody knows him, started in Chinese opera, so he's an incredible tumbler. He's an incredible comedian. He's highly influenced by Buster Keaton. These are all the things that everybody knows. But it's better just to watch, and the way he's able to pull things from the set and incorporate them into a fight is unparalleled. And this one, Thunderbolt, I guess the lesser known, like it's a 95. He's a car racer. He runs like a mechanic, and he gets involved in like underground racing. And this is a huge fight in a pachinko parlor with like Japanese yakuza that starts on the ground and goes all the way to the ceiling.
All right, Andy, you ready to roll that one? I'm always amazed at Jackie Chan fight scenes. I mean, it's not just the fact that he uses every object and surface, but also he puts in these little beats, these little sort of comic pauses that kind of give it this interesting rhythm. He's really amazing, isn't he?
Absolutely. And the whole thing builds to the thing crashing and all the little marbles falling out of the walls and flooding the area. And he ends up on the top on these little bouncy things. So I highly recommend watching the whole sequence as soon as possible. Quite a masterful bit of business. And they're like, the rest of the movie is not one of his best movies, but there's always one or two sequences that will just blow you away. I mean, there's always one thing with him and his stunt team, they can pull off some incredible stuff. And specifically with his films, what I appreciate is that when they punch, they actually often hit each other. And that kind of impact really comes across. You said you have Scott Adkins coming in, but one of his first features, he has one scene, I think it's a movie called Extreme Challenge, I think it's called. And he is in this futuristic, Olympic Games kind of thing. And he's just getting pummeled. And it was like a real learning experience for him, and how the closer you get to punching someone, the better it looks on screen. And it's even better if you actually punch them. So.
Right. Years ago, I saw a documentary about Jackie Chan and his stunt team and how they developed these stunts. And they have this giant warehouse with just all these objects, cars, brooms, mops, everything. And they just spend hours figuring out the kind of comedic potential of any given object. And it's like, so a lot of work goes into kind of like creating those scenes. I was pretty amazed. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the way in which they construct these movies is pretty fascinating too, because they kind of do it in a different way than the Hollywood. You give it one screenwriter, he writes the script. A lot of the time they have an idea, they all start brainstorming, ideas are coming from everywhere, and the director says, I want this, and this. And then after this brainstorming session, then they'll try to like put an arc over it. So it's more, that's why these films are often like kind of like overflowing with ideas and scenes and a lot of tone shifts. Like you really have extreme violence and then extreme silliness. And that's one of the reasons why I love these films as well, because they always keep you on your toes in terms of tone and pacing, and as well as content.
Yeah, and in the chat, someone just mentioned that this is one of the reasons that Jackie became so popular in the West was the mix of martial arts and slapstick, which is very accessible and things like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah. The Rumble in the Bronx, which is on the list, that was his big breakthrough in the U.S. I think that was #1 in the box office. And then, as you can see, from that point forward, he started eyeing more movies where he could speak English more and more. But it's interesting because this period is like the beginning of the end of like the peak Jackie Chan that we know and love. There's still some incredible sequences in these films, but it's, you know, not like the complete wire to wire, you know, masterpieces like, you know, Drunken Master 1 and 2 and stuff like that. But you do that much to your body over so many years, you can't do it forever.
exactly. Yeah. Well, because we're kind of getting close to the time, there's one clip I really wanted to show. It's a complete change of pace, but one of my favorite Hong Kong action directors is Johnny Do. And
Oh
this
yeah,
is a clip that we talked about from the film 3. And it's complete
yeah,
change of pace in that it's very slow. It involves guns and not so much martial arts. And there is a secret to how this scene was made, which I'm sure many people here know. But if you do know, don't reveal it just yet. So the people who don't know, we can talk about it after we see the clip. But do you want to set it up at all?
Yeah. Well, Johnny Do, his action scenes are more about choreography and how people are moving inside the frame than the spectacular martial arts moves. So it's all about, and this is a shootout inside of a hospital that is very unique, and I won't say anything more than that.
All right, Andy, are you ready to show 3? All right, so would anyone, no giving it away if you know, but would anyone like to guess what's special about how that scene was made? Feel free to put it in the chat. We don't have any guesses. I guess we should reveal it. So, well, one take, yes, but there's more. So the scene appears to be in slow motion, but actually the actors are moving in slow motion. He filmed it in real time, and they spent weeks and weeks with basically a choreographer teaching them to make every move, you know, in this very slow rhythm, so they could make it appear as it was in slow motion, with this giant camera rig kind of like moving among all of the people, and they had to slide walls out of the way. It's an incredible bit of action scene making when you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also, if you like that one, I'd also recommend another one on the list, the opening shot from Breaking News, which is a 7-minute action sequence in one take, like a crane shot down a building into the street, and this whole shootout all takes place in one take. It's also quite fantastic.
Would you agree that he seems to sort of almost challenge himself to make these difficult scenes? I mean, why do you think he goes to these great lengths?
Well, yeah, in the day when he was so prolific, he was making, you know, 4 or 5 movies a year. You got to challenge yourself to keep everything exciting, and I think that was a part of it, for sure. So we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping his output has really slowed down recently, as everybody's has, and I'm hoping they'll be able to keep doing that moving forward. I want to see Election 3 someday.
Yeah. Well, he did a few years ago say that he had been spending too much time kind of on the business side of his company, Milky Way, and that he was going to give that up so he could make more movies. So hopefully he'll get to that, you know, as soon as possible.
I mean, people have been pretty down on Chasing Dream, his most recent film, which came out last year. I think it's quite good. It's a wild kind of mixed martial arts love story, and it's you know, mashing together genres in a kind of a classic way. And so I recommend that one too. It's not an action movie, but
right, yeah, it's a real change of pace. I actually showed it in the festival. Unfortunately, we had to stream it only in July, but maybe it'll come out in some kind of form later. Well, since we are getting close to the end, is there one clip that we haven't gotten to that you really think people need to see before we adjourn?
Oh man,
I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't.
so many things. But I guess one that really blew me away when I revisited it was Troy Hark's Time and Tide. And we haven't, you know, watched one of Troy Hark's films yet. And this is from 2000, a shootout in this apartment complex between these like Brazilian commandos and local gangsters. And it's more of an impressionistic kind of action sequence. It's not about pure skill. It's more about the impression, and obviously that things make, and guys crashing through windows and rappelling down walls. It's quite something. So yeah, we can go out with Time and Tide.
All right, Andy, go ahead and play Time and Tide.
I love that shot where the camera flies out the window down with him. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Well, I guess we're about out of time here, but thanks, Robert, and thanks everyone for coming. This was really great. And my colleague In Ying just posted some links, both for a survey to let us know how we're doing and how you can also sign up to learn more about our events, and the website for the Made in Hong Kong Film Festival, which lists the next two events, including next Thursday, 8 o'clock, a live DJing by DJ Two Tone Jones with Killzone 2 starring Donnie Yen. You've been well primed for action movies after tonight, so I hope you'll join us then. So thanks again, Robert, and thanks you to everyone who came. Good night.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. Good night.
Good night.